and the place where the event occurs and the time when the event occurs. These two things are very important because different times have different factors to affect that particular event. So, unless we take into account the time of the event, we are not able to understand the event perfectly. For example, if an event has occurred in the middle century or in the middle or during the Middle Age, then we cannot understand that particular event with the help of 19th century because the 19th century historic factors are totally different from those of Middle Age. So, if a student needs to understand Geoffrey Chaucer, then he will have to analyze the factors which forced Geoffrey Chaucer to produce the type of poetry that he has produced. And if we are studying Wordsworth, then definitely we have to understand the factors which contribute to develop the 19th century. Without this, we will not be able to understand either Chaucer or William Wordsworth. So it is established now that time is very important for student of English literature to understand the poet and authors of that period. Today, I am giving you an introduction to the history of English literature as a whole, which means that we have to study early Middle Age and the Middle Age period, then the Shakespearean age, then the Miltonic period, and then the age of Pope and Dryden, then age of Wordsworth, sorry, Coleridge, and others, till we come to the modern 20th century. So, my today's lecture will focus upon a brief introduction to different ages so that you have an idea as to how the history of English literature developed from time to time. Now, we begin with the age of Chaucer. Now, Chaucer lived in a period where the history was developing very gradually. But Middle Age was definitely an age of happenings. Very important event took place during this age. And they contributed greatly to produce the literature of that period. For example, during the Middle Ages, things were shaping up. 14th century was very, very eventful as far as literature is concerned. And remember, William Shakespeare was not only the production of the factors which were present during that age, but also the intellectual movements and the intellectual development which was taking place gradually. Now, middle age may be regarded as the foundation of the history of English literature. Especially Geoffrey Chaucer of Monmouth took very keen interest in the events which taught Geoffrey Chaucer a number of lessons to produce his important production. Now, let us analyze some of the important factors which helped Geoffrey Chaucer to produce such great work. Remember, students, that the early age was the early development of intellect. And as with the passage, this intellectual development progressed. The production of literature also progressed and grew. For example, if during the Middle Age, Chaucer had not taken into account the events that were taking place around him, he would have not been able to produce such a wonderful piece of poetry. Sir Geoffrey Chaucer took great interest in very tiny event which took place during his age. He did not ignore any factor which contributed to develop the art of that period. Now, if you have a look at the different parts of Geoffrey Chaucer's poetry, you learn how classification during that particular period was present. What were the problems of different classes and how each class was struggling in its own place to surpass the other period. Students, Chaucer was a very keen observer. He very keenly took interest in those developing events which were likely to contribute to develop the Middle Age. Geoffrey Chaucer understood the lower classes very well. He understood the struggling middle class as well. And he predicted the later classes which were going to be the outcome of the early and the middle class. This is the reason why Geoffrey Chaucer is regarded as the poet and author of all times, because he did not confine himself to his age only. Rather, he tried to see across his age. When we have a look at Chaucerian poetry, we know that the poetry which was produced by the 17th century poets and the 18th century poets, that was also known to Geoffrey Chaucer. He discussed the middle class with a very keen insight. He knew that the middle class was always struggling like the lower class to go upward. The desire of lower class was always to enter the middle class, and the middle class always struggled to reach the higher middle class or the modern age. So we can say that the seed which was sown by Geoffrey Chaucer very rightly turned into a very tall tree, having the leaves of middle class and the flowers of future. So, studying middle class means understanding and analyzing the trunk of a tree. And the leaves which are attached are not independent of the trunk where the leaves grew out of. Students, middle class, as I told you, is the foundation. Because when you study other poets, then Chaucer, then also you know that all of them were trying their level best to produce something which may connect their period with the other periods, with the incoming times. Because a poet has a free soaring soul. An author has a free soaring pen. He does not confine himself to any limitation. He knows the body which covers his soul is also an obstruction. That is why we believe that death does not only do away with our body, rather, it also liberates our soul and provides us with an opportunity to fly to all those other areas where normally a human being does not reach. Students, I'm trying to explain to you a bit philosophically the reason which develops or which turns a human being into a visionary person. You cannot become a writer, a poet, unless and until you have got a vision. So, the first thing which you need to be a good writer is vision. What exactly or how exactly do you look at different events? For example, the reaction of a sensitive person to an event is quite different from that of a non-sensitive person. A sensitive person is moved spiritually by the event which he experiences. But if a person is non-sensitive, then his spirit is unmoved and he is not able to produce anything artistic. For example, if a person has a brush in his hand and if he paints something on a paper or on a wall, it is not his brush which is painting picture on the wall or on a piece of paper. Rather, it is his vision which produces something marvelous or something worth reading or worth seeing. So, it is clear that instruments are not important. Rather, the person who is using that particular instrument is important. For example, if you are playing piano, it's not the piano which is producing the music, but it is your finger which is activating the buttons of the piano to produce something marvelous. So, when a poet produces something in the form of poetry, it is his vision, his soul, which produces that particular masterpiece. Now, Shakespeare, a great poet, a great playwright, a visionary, was a human being like you and I. But his vision was great. He had the ability to foresee the incoming time. He was able